When looking up the definition of leadership, most dictionaries interpret leadership as leading an organization or group of people. Autistic leadership is about taking the initiative to address our concerns and help others to do the same to influence a culture of inclusion. Shalise Hurd is my guest, and we'll talk about what Black Autistic Leadership looks like. Shalise will highlight the dual stigmas faced by Black autistics battling both racism and ableism within and outside their communities. Shalise and I will also talk about the challenges of internalizing societal messages and the importance of self-advocacy and resistance of systemic oppression. Welcome to this episode of today's Autistic Moment. Today is your day on Today's Autistic Moment, a podcast for autistic adults by an autistic adult, where autistic adults get to be yourselves in a space that is safe and made especially for you. Come on in and have a seat or go for a walk. In this safe space, you fidget and stim all you like. This first segment of Today's Autistic Moment is sponsored by the Autism Society of Minnesota, known as AWESOME throughout Minnesota's autism community. As Minnesota's first autism resource for more than 50 years, AWESOME serves the whole state, the whole spectrum for the whole life. Visit AWESOME at ausm.org. Before we dig into today's topic, I want to give some basic information about today's Autistic Moment to help all listeners find our many resources. Please visit todaysautisticmoment.com, where you can listen to the podcast, get transcripts, program updates, and read the guest bios pages. You can also visit the Adult Autism Resources links page. Please visit the Future Shows page to read the titles, guests, and descriptions of all the shows coming up. The transcripts are sponsored by Minnesota Independence College and Community. There is a link provided to get access to a document form of the transcript without the purple-colored background so that you can print it without using up the ink on your printer. The written document has a font that is accessible for dyslexics. There are additional transcripts available in Spanish, German, French, and Chinese simplified. The transcripts have hyperlinks that are mentioned by the guests. Please follow Today's Autistic Moment on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. Join Today's Autistic Moment community group page on Facebook for conversations and updates. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel at Today's Autistic Moment to watch Autistic Voices Roundtable discussions. On Wednesday, February 26th at 2 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, there will be a new episode of Autistic Voices Roundtable discussion entitled, I Am Autistic, I Am Not Disordered. Eric Garcia and 3 other panelists will answer some comments that were made last November that autistics are not normal and we need special treatment. Our panelists will talk about being autistic as a unique identity and how we are not disordered. Though autistics have disabilities because of the microaggression of ableism that society uses to marginalize autistics, we do have strengths to achieve success that go unrecognized. This episode of Autistic Voices Roundtable discussion will be live and recorded on the YouTube channel at Today's Autistic Moment. One last thing before we get to the first commercial break. One of the multi-dimensions of being autistic is personal self-care. One aspect of that leadership is to set good boundaries for yourself and communicate them with others around you. Create safe spaces where you can be with the people who support you best, or where you can be alone to regulate yourself. Your self-care is the way you look after your autistic needs. Turn the social media off for a while, stim and or fidget, or spend time on your special interests and enjoy them. When you do your self-care, you take ownership of your own life and are true to who you are. Never apologize for it, and don't let others tell you that you are doing anything wrong. After this first commercial break, Shalice Hurd will join me for the conversation about what Black Autistic Leadership looks like. Today's Autistic Moment can be downloaded and heard on most podcast apps, including Apple, Google Play, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, iHeartRadio, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, TuneIn, Pandora, Amazon Music, Audible, Podcast Addict, Podcast Chaser. If you are looking for the transcripts, go to todaysautisticmoment.com, click on the episode you want to listen to, and follow the directions to find the transcripts. Thank you for listening to Today's Autistic Moment. Support for Today's Autistic Moment comes from Best Care Home Care Agency. Best Care offers PCA services, and your friend or family member could be your paid PCA. Best Care also offers homemaking, FMS services, and 2, 4, 5D services throughout the Metro and Greater Minnesota. Visit their website, bestcaremn.com, to learn more about their services.
support comes from Minnesota Independence College and Community, a life and career skills program for young adults with autism and learning differences. Help a young adult take a step towards their independence and a vibrant life. Learn more at miccommunity.org.
Autistic adults aren't getting the support we need. It affects our health, our income, financial stability, and our ability to live independently. ITI Assistive Technologies is changing that. This autistic-led team has created Decide with 2 tools built for neurodivergent minds. One lets users quickly pick from custom lists based on their energy level. The other guides them through big decisions using simple agree-disagree statements that match their values. Visit itiassist.com/decide to join their research beta and get all features free, or wait for the January launch at just $5 a month. Shalice Hurd, welcome back to today's Autistic Moment. It is such a pleasure to have you here, so welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. We are starting, or we are in Black History Month, and it's almost an understatement that we are seeing a rise in it being acceptable to further marginalize and stigmatize autistic adults with ableism rhetoric, but we're also seeing a rise in racial rhetoric. And one of the points that some guests have made is that, for Black individuals, you're feeling the punch of both, and you're also feeling some exclusion in both communities. So I think I want to talk about this from the perspective of navigating the future of multidimensional autistic leadership, because we want to talk about how Black autistic adults can lead in a times like we're having. So, I think this is an important topic to talk about in light of the culture and the cultural shifts that we are looking at, the cultural upheavals that we're looking at. Yeah. So to start off, let's build a foundation for this conversation. What does Black autistic leadership and the fact that it's multidimensional, let's give this a foundation so that we can really build on this conversation. So go ahead.
So I would say that being Black and autistic and in leadership, the thing that's unique about it is the fact that we're battling both stigmas. We're battling both communities to where we feel othered in. And that makes it challenging because on the one hand, you're dealing with racism from general society and you're dealing with ableism and you're being othered by the majority community, right? And so even within our own community as Black people, that's another set of challenges that we deal with too, because in the Black community, unfortunately, autism still has a stigma, mental health still has a stigma. And so we deal with being misunderstood from that community as well. And so it's like we feel out of place a lot of times because both communities no one accepts us. No one, is really receptive to us. And so that presents its own challenges.
Yeah, I do see that. Um, and so, I focus a lot on our intersectional communities, and here we have autism intersecting with racism and
Yes.
people of color, if you don't mind,
Yes.
blackness, and
Mhm.
lots of other intersectional groups here. You know, um, you know, we're seeing this on where microaggression is growing, and as
Yes.
I say, we're seeing that these things have become more acceptable. I think last year, I remember I was talking with Precious Leslie. We were talking about healthcare and educational disparities for Black autistic adults. And one of the questions I had asked Precious was, it feels to me like the rhetoric is becoming more intense. And Precious's reply was, I don't know as though it's becoming more intense, is that it's becoming more and more socially acceptable.
Yes. What it is, I think it definitely is becoming more normalized.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's intense only because it's only, yes, to a degree, it's becoming more intense. But the fact that I think the reason it's becoming more intense is because it's being more normalized. And when
Yes.
people feel that something's normal, something's acceptable, they're going to keep doing it and getting worse with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to go back to something my friend Ellie Wilson, she's the executive director at the Autism Society of Minnesota. There's a therapist there who's fond of saying that normal is a setting on a washing machine. It doesn't really refer to people, or a single person. And
Mm,
so, that concept of normal isn't exactly helpful in a
mm.
lot of these things.
Yeah, like the concept of normal is very much irrelevant in
Yeah.
a sense like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah, absolutely, And so it goes back to the question, where do you see Black autistic adults being leading? One of the things I find it's important for our audience and our guests to repeat, thinking about how autistics are multidimensional. We are neurological, we are physical, we are cultural, we are
Oh yeah.
awareness, we are avoidance through masking, seeking, relational, personal, social, engaging. And I think when we're talking about systemic racism and ableism, which affects both communities, and then we have the LGBTQIA plus communities that are also part of these communities as well. And so, you know, what I want us to really go to is the fact that just because we're in a time when, the upheaval is so great, and as we said, it's becoming acceptable, thinking about our multidimensional identities and the ways in which we live and breathe and communicate and all that, what do you think are the important ways that Black autistic adults can lead?
You know what? That is a heavy question.
Yeah,
And the first thing that comes to mind is I think that community in our case
yeah,
would be the best way to lead because we definitely need to set an example by having a community of like-minded people,
yeah.
similar struggles, similar background, so that we all can relate and show that yes, this is leadership, and at the same time, there are people out here that can relate to you. There are people out here who you can feel at home with because we understand what it's like to be, a part of these identities. So I think community would be the first step toward leadership.
Well, here are some other things that in my 100th show, I had Dr. Devin Price, and my audience is going to hear me repeat this quite a few times.
Mhm.
But I had asked Devin about how autistics can be leaders here.
Mm.
And there were so many great things that he said in there. Among them was that autistics are already really good at building safe spaces for ourselves where we can, communicate with others who are like minded, like us. And also, because of demand avoidance, we can be
Oh
the
yeah,
first people to say, no, I am not going to be used as someone's tool of oppression. I am
no,
not going to be someone's reason to,
absolutely.
so, and that's part, even when we're taking care of ourselves, because when we're
Mhm.
feeling this horrible, um, you know, feeling of having our identities, attacked, and just the stuff that comes over social media with people being so mean, you
Yes.
know, we can be the first people to say, I'm not going to follow this rule that I have to sit here and read it. I'm going to let myself get away from it, and I'm going to, find my people to exchange our experiences, and we're
Yeah.
going to find our ways to be leaders by just, you know, being who we are and celebrating who we are. So I'll let you give some answers to that.
And so, like you said about PDA, demand avoidance, that does help us too. And I think that goes hand in hand with a sense of rigidity and a sense of justice that we have.
Yes.
It makes us refuse to go on with things that are, a tool for oppression or to be someone's, I guess, token person.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
we have that strong sense of justice, we're going to be against it. And so I
Yeah.
think in this way, it helps us to stand firm on what we believe in and to avoid masking or to be more willing to unmask.
What about in your local communities? I mean, what are some ways that you see, Black autistics leading in local communities where uh, it can be difficult to find each other. I imagine.
So I would say in my local communities, most of the time it starts off on social media or
Right.
online because we, from my experience, and I know I speak for myself in this
That's all
situation and a
right.
lot of statistics that we tend to communicate heavily online and find our community online. And so it starts off that way
Yeah.
and then leads off to us meeting in person and, having local events. So
Yeah.
that's one of the ways that I've seen it happen. It starts off online and eventually becomes an in-person ordeal.
After this next commercial break, Shalice Hurd will share some resources like Facebook groups where Black autistics can find some community support and validation. Shalice will also talk about the importance of creating environments where the Black autistic culture can find leadership among each other.
Hello, autism community. My name is Lisa Morgan. I'm an autistic adult too, and I know firsthand what it feels like to be unintentionally harmed by well-meaning professionals when reaching out for help. My passion is to help autistic people find and use their own unique strengths to help themselves. Are you rule-based, a literal thinker, have a focused interest? Let's figure out together how to use the strengths of autism to find solutions. I offer life coaching for autistic adults and individualized workshops for professionals. To find out more, go to autismcrisissupport.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Matthew, the hashtag Actually Autistic Coach. If you're an autistic adult seeking support, or a friend, family member looking to better understand and assist autistic adults, Matthew is your go-to resource. As a seasoned teacher, consultant, and mentor, Matthew is dedicated to empowering the autistic community. He offers free support groups for autistic adults, educational workshops, and online meditation circles for mindfulness. For organizations, Matthew provides specialized training sessions on inclusivity. With over 15 years of mentoring autistic entrepreneurs, he offers personalized one-on-one coaching, guiding individuals to start businesses, manage careers, and build healthy relationships while embracing their authentic autistic selves. Matthew believes in thriving, not just surviving. Visit theautisticcoach.com today for a more empowered future. Today's Autistic Moment is the best podcast where our intersectional communities are well represented through creating safe spaces for in-depth conversations like Shalise Hurd and I are having today. I am working to be sure that I can maintain this podcast where the voices of autistic adults are front and center. I need some help from all of you to maintain today's Autistic Moment podcast equipment and software running in tip-top shape. Please go to todaysautisticmoment.com and click on Support Today's Autistic Moment. You can click on the coffee icon, that's KO-FI icon, to make a one-time donation. You can also tap the Patreon icon to become a monthly subscriber. Donations to today's Autistic Moment are not tax deductible. You can also support the podcast by going to the logo shop to purchase a 16-ounce drinking cup or a lapel pin. Thank you for supporting today's Autistic Moment. Okay, we know that autistic adults are engaging regarding this topic of Black Autistic Leadership. How can we create the environments to affect change here? You spoke about social media as being a place to begin dialoguing with one another. You know, what are some Can you share with our audience some online groups where they might meet other Black autistics to talk about ways that you can lead, that you can get some encouragement from one another to validate each other, because we know that one of those things that's very difficult is to feel like
Absolutely.
you're being validated today. Go ahead.
So there's a few groups I'm a part of on Facebook. One of them is called Black Autistics, and it's full of people who are Black and autistic as well. And then there's the Hidden Army, that's full of Indigenous, Blacks, LGBTQIA,
Yeah.
people with autism. There's that as well that I'm a part of. And there are also there's also this other influencer in another group. It's called the Black Autist. He is called the Black Autist, and he has groups all the time, for autistic leaders who are of color as well. That also includes other minorities and not just Black autistics.
Yeah. Yeah. I have followed that individual, I
Eh?
believe, probably, and I'd
Oh yeah.
like to connect more with that person, actually. Uh, yeah, but that's really important, that you have that place where someone says, I'm having this happen to me, and someone's actually going to validate you. They're not going to
Mm.
minimalize your experience. They're going
Right.
to, you know, reply with, yes, I've had this happen too, and this is how I felt, and this is how I dealt with it. And, you know, this is part of that resistance of being used as someone's tool of oppression, because you gather together and you kind of draw that strength from one another,
Oh
because
yeah.
you share in your autistic experiences, you share in your experiences of being of other races, of other minority groups, and many whom we don't know. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, when we talk about intersectionality, it also includes those of us who are multiply neurodivergent, ADHD, dyslexic,
Right.
and all these groups of people. We are all part of the same. Uh, we are part of the same community of people, but we're still trying to find our place where we can swap ideas and swap needs and say, hey, someone's broken and starving, so where do they find the resources to gain assistance with that? And that's where I would point many to. Aluatobi Otoganwa, they are the uh, involved with the Autistic People of Color Fund, where they do assist, with some financial supports if needed. So go ahead and talk a little bit more about that as you wish.
So the supports, that I think that we need as well is really important that we have a place like you said earlier that we don't have to feel invalidated about our experiences. A safe space is what we need. And I also think that I wish that we have more of that because I feel like even online it's not enough of these spaces. And so we definitely need more of these. And also even online, there needs to be more of us openly talking about and feeling safe to discuss these things that people want to minimize about what we go through. And like you said as well, I did not realize the neurodivergent spectrum was way bigger, than ADHD and autism. So apparently there's a whole umbrella of
Yes.
neurodivergence. And so there needs to be more groups as well that includes this umbrella because what we're seeing mostly online is just, autism and ADHD, but we're not seeing enough of the whole umbrella included as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That umbrella, I think, is going to get even larger over time
Yeah,
goes on because
I agree.
yeah, we're seeing like people with OCD are actually being added to these numbers.
Dyspraxia,
Yeah.
this
Yeah, and also
depression.
complex PTSD is kind of beginning to come into that. And the thing is you're right. I mean, we love autistics and ADHDers, but that umbrella is larger, and it's for me being gay and that sort of thing. It's kind of nice to know that I'm part of more than one group of people who have the alphabetic letters that go the growing alphabet soup sort of thing. Yeah, so you know um yeah, we also want to be talking about interdependence
Yes,
here.
interdependence,
Yeah,
community.
and this is where I want to kind of see if we can open the door for some conversations about how Black autistics are leaders um, throughout their lives in their unique contexts. How can our autistic communities um, how can our autistic communities become more aware of the Black autistics that are among us? I mean, um, again, going back to Precious Leslie, she had said a couple years ago that, you know, we need to have these discussions about how the neurodiversity movement has been whitewashing, quite frankly. And we
Yeah,
also need to be having more conversations about, ableism. And of course, how some people say, it's very difficult actually for a Black autistic to get a diagnosis because of how the DSM is written, and also because you know things such as Black autistics are very blunt in the beginning, period, and so there are people who and so are most of the Black community is very forthcoming. So sometimes it can be difficult to believe somebody, or we say you can't possibly be autistic because they're so forthcoming, or that sort of thing, when that's part of your cultural identity as well.
right. But this is where it becomes complex for the simple fact that, all of the research on autism out there, as you see, is based on white, culture and European culture.
Right.
And so it's just becoming, it's only a recent phenomenon that Black autism is studied like now they're just now looking at the fact that autism may present differently in Black people because of our culture and because of even with other races of people, like autism presents differently for us because, it's a mixture of cultural as well as neurological behavior. And so they are starting to understand that in research. And I think that in order for us to unwhitewash
Mm.
neurodiversity is we need to put more focus on understanding that autism looks different every culture
Right,
instead of
exactly.
just focusing and narrowing down on the white, how it presents in white people. We need to also realize that it presents differently in other races of people. And a
It's
lot of stereotypes,
yeah,
like a lot of the Black stereotypes do tend to be autistic, but they've stigmatized it to the point where it's bad, when it actually is just, autism presenting itself in Black people.
yeah, yeah. And you know, what are some ways that you advocate for yourself with things like that?
So for me, I'm honestly very straight up and forthcoming, and I just tell it like it is. So that's one of the things that I do to advocate myself. Like I advocate for myself. I not only do I present research, and I also present my, history. I present my struggle, and I'm very open and honest about it. But I also let people know that not all of us are the same, and that just because I may look normal to you or I may look defiant to you does not mean that that's what it is.
Hmm.
And so it just, for me, it comes down to just being straightforward and, upfront about it, about my struggle.
Yeah. And how are you coping with a lot of that? Given that, I mean,
It's not easy.
well, it's just the white supremacy stuff has really been
Mm,
getting um, uh, it's just in people's faces right now.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how do you uh, how do you cope with that, and how do you respond to stuff like that? I mean, this is where I feel like Black autistics like you can give to us who are white some
So,
understanding of what that's like for you, and what are some ways that we can help advocate with you.
so for instance, I remember I was a part when I first was on my journey for autism advocacy. This was about when I was 18, 10 years ago. So what happened, I was in the middle of a forum and I was expressing my needs and struggle as an autistic person. And it was mostly white. It was actually all white people in the group.
Hmm.
And just because of the way I expressed myself, I was very blunt, I was very outspoken, and I did not back down. And I was very vocal about how angry I was about the injustice that I faced. And the white people in the group, they, just misconstrued me as being aggressive, as being
Mm-hmm.
entitled, as being, mean. And I was just misconstrued to be the bad guy just because I'm a Black woman who has autism and I'm speaking out about things that I face. And so what I did to cope with that, I simply called it out. Like I called out the fact that, if I was a white woman, y'all would not be treating me this way. If I was a white woman, you would believe me. If I was white, you would be more willing to understand me instead of just dismissing me. Like I straight up called it out because it was the anger in me that, I had to call it out because, I can't cope with just letting something like that happen to me and nothing being said about it. So yeah, like I just can't let that happen. And so I think white people what they can do to learn from us is actually to listen to us and
Mm-hmm.
remove themselves from the stereotypes they heard from us about us,
Yeah.
remove themselves from, what their family says about Black people, and actually have an open mind when they listen to us.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this as a white person who's really had to learn a lot. And part of that does is just um, confronting the racism within ourselves. You know, for me, it was very much a lot of learned behaviors from my parents, that the ways that they spoke about black individuals, and just the language my father used, the language my mother used. And you know, I also back in 2011, uh, my husband and I, we were part of a host committee for the uh, National Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Task Force when they had their Creating Change conference here in Minnesota. And one of the pre-conference um, opportunities was to learn about white supremacy and
Mm.
to learn um, how much we have, how much rhetoric we use and hear that really does speak racist language, but we don't
Mm.
think about it um, because we're not hearing ourselves through the ears of someone who is black. For
Right.
example, it's an example of a gay community center somewhere, and there's this sign on the wall that reads, "We are a white gay community center. We have a lot of black members. We are not racist." And
Right.
so we went through the process of explaining just how that sounds, because to us it doesn't sound like anything. But actually, what we're saying is that, you know, the black folks here would not be accepted unless we accepted them, as if they don't have the power to accept themselves unless we do. We went through the process of explaining that when you say things like that, it really there is a white supremacist culture behind words like that.
Yeah.
And so part of this really comes down to facing the systemic racism within yourself, even if you think it's not there. Sometimes you need to think about the things you might say. Like, for example, there are ways that a lot of us are unintentionally ableist. You know,
Right.
for example, when we say, you know, I'm giving an example here that, well, I don't have a hearing problem. And thank God I don't have that problem. Okay,
Yeah.
that's it's unintended, but it's very much ableist
I
thinking.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, and so some of it just comes from being willing to confront, listen to, and then hear what you're saying. And as what you're saying is listening to the stories of autistics from other racial backgrounds just tell you what it feels like when they hear certain things said. So
Mm.
feel free to go from there and see where it takes us.
And it just reminds me of, for instance, I used to be in the autism advocacy groups, being the only black kid, the only black person in the group. And I was labeled loud. I was
Mm-hmm.
labeled aggressive, and the white people that I was in the group with didn't realize how racist that actually was.
Mm.
And even as a black person, having internalized racism because I didn't fully understand or like myself at the time, I even didn't realize I was dealing with, unintended racism or, racism. I didn't always realize it was racism either. I just thought, okay, I don't know why they're saying I'm loud. I don't know why I'm saying it's aggression, why they're saying that I'm aggressive. Like I didn't know, but it took me getting older and realizing what racism was because, I was young and I didn't quite understand the world around me at the time. But yeah, so what it takes is that they have to be willing to unlearn these things
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of things that you wouldn't expect are rooted in ableism and racism. Even if you think it's harmless, a lot of things are rooted in that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, even some of the things that someone might think. I've had
Right.
to confront a lot of stuff in me. In fact,
Yeah.
I still every now and then I still have to.
And a lot of it's internalized ableism too, because, for instance, I know in my own life, asking for support, like social supports and any type of work support, I was against it a lot of the times because really it was internalized ableism. Like I believed that it made me slow, or I believed that it made me crazy or stupid to accept or get support. I actually, was believing these things that were ableist about myself, and really that was dangerous for myself to believe
Right.
in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Or internalizing some message that, there is something wrong with you.
Yeah. Which, to be honest, I still struggle with that. Like
Yeah.
this idea that something's wrong with me because I can't do things the way that my normal peers do them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The typical peers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to some of my autistic audience, if you don't think you have any internalized racism within yourself, think about what happens when you're in a store shopping. You're in an aisle, and suddenly a person of color turns the, and starts walking down the same aisle. What are the things you're thinking as soon as you see that person in that aisle? What are some of the things you're thinking when somebody approaches you to just ask you a question? Are you seeing them as somebody that's just coming up to ask you a question, or are you questioning whether this person's going to be violent towards you just because? You've heard that they can be, violent, or they can, start playing with your brain and just whatever. I mean, think about the things that you think about. Think about the things that you think when you're at a bus stop and there just happens to be other people of color there. Think about riding the bus. There's people of color on your bus. What are you thinking when you hear them talking to each other? What are you thinking when, you say something like, that individual is just trying to fleece the system, and that's why they're a big mouth about something. Okay, think about those things that you think, and ask yourself, is this really appropriate or even good that I'm asking that? I'm thinking that, and if you are, you know, it's a good idea to say, gee, I never realized how much that was really affecting my thinking. Um, but I'm saying this to say this is how we unlearn. One example, I should say, of how we unlearn what we've learned. You know, because there's something about systemic racism that is almost that is different from a lot of the other forms of discrimination we deal with, because I've been feeling for a long time now that even LGBT people, with all of the marginalization we feel, even autistic people, a lot of the marginalization that we do experience, I feel like racism draws some of the worst within us.
Oh,
More
yes.
so than just about any bias that exists. Following the final commercial break, Shalise will give some advice to other Black autistics who are feeling defeated by not internalizing the messages of a system that is so messed up. Right after that will be today's Autistic Community Bulletin Board.
Looking Forward Life Coaching is a Twin Cities-based nonprofit that provides mentorship and coaching for individuals, couples, and families, either face-to-face or virtually. Some areas that Looking Forward Life Coaching can provide services are organizational skills, time management, employment coaching, relationship coaching, and many more. Our coaches are trained in person-centered approaches, and we can provide person-centered plans with obtainable goals. We accept all waivers from the state of Minnesota, with the exception of elderly. We also have reduced rates and scholarships for private pay. If you would like more information or schedule a free meet and greet, visit our website at www.lookingforwardlc.org or call us at 612-504-7414. Looking Forward Life Coaching helps change stumbling blocks of life into stepping stones towards success.
On February 23rd, Kayla Allen Omiza will be my special guest for the episode Black Autistic Leadership in a Time of DEI Erasure. The US government and many companies are pulling out of having diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. The programs were created to help do some checks and balances to alleviate discrimination. The programs are pulling back by claiming that they created more discrimination in the settings they were designed for. How can Black autistics lead with all this going on? Join Kayla Allen Omiza and I for this insightful conversation. On March 9th, Carol Jean Whittington will be here to talk about what is autistic leadership. What exactly is autistic leadership? What does autistic leadership mean for each autistic person? Carol Jean Whittington brings her enthusiasm and energy to what is sure to be a great conversation that is sure to be an exciting approach to what autistic leadership is about. Becca Laurie Hector will be here on March 23rd for the episode Self-Care is Personal Autistic Leadership. Thank you for listening to today's Autistic Moment. I like to throw an idea, something like this out there. Um, what might you say to a Black autistic right now who's feeling really defeated by a lot of what's going on? I mean, with the culture, the way we're headed, and the current social political structures that have obviously whitewashed everything, and is continuing to do so. I mean,
Mm.
I can imagine that you must have those moments where you feel
Yeah.
defeated. And how do you
Oh,
deal with that?
so I will say this, a lot of us as Black autistic people or people of color who are autistic, many of us internalize, what's going on in the world because number one, we tend to be the recipients of all the ill that comes through that.
Mm,
And then we internalize it thinking that somehow it's our fault, something about us that we deserve it. Why is this happening to us? Like it has to be something wrong with us, the reason that we're, experiencing this, right? And so what I would say is it's really important not to get caught up in internalizing it and realizing that, you're going through these things because it's not because you're lazy. It's not because, you're horrible or you're a criminal or, that you're some stereotype. None of this stuff has anything to do with you. It's a messed up system and it's not your fault that the system is messed up.
right.
So I think it's really important not to get involved in internalizing because when you start internalizing this, it's a downward spiral and it can cause you to get into a depression.
Yeah.
Important to keep from doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, and here's another thing that I've learned from a lot of my advocacy too for LGBT people and autistic people. When there are campaigns and environments that are really working to the point where we're really having to fight and argue just to exist.
Right.
Internalizing those messages is really an unavoidable consequence. So if you're feeling guilty because you're internalized, don't go there. But at the same time, you have an obligation to yourself to constantly purge that from yourself and to continually discover your strengths and celebrate your strengths, your successes, the things you are able to do. And it's no simple task. And again, we're dealing with a culture that is upheaving a lot of the progress that's been made on so many levels. I mean, it's disheartening that that's where we are, but we are here. And so part of autistic leadership continues to be, and I repeat, just telling yourself, I am not going to be used as someone's tool of oppression, and the person who's not going to take the brunt of that is me. And it is a challenge right now, and there's a lot of things that are making us angry, that are making us sad, that are making us be defensive.
Evil is what it is.
Yeah. Well, Shalice Hurd, I thank you so much for this time and being so candid with what you shared here. It's important that we hear these things, and one of the things I love doing about today's autistic moment is providing that safe space for us to have these in-depth conversations.
Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm so glad you've been here. Today's Autistic Community Bulletin Board. All of these events and any others with their links that are not mentioned here are available on todaysautisticmoment.com/bulletin board. The Adult Coffee Club is back for autistic adults in Minnesota. They are held on the second Tuesday of every month, weather permitting, at Dogwood Coffee, located at 2700 University Avenue West, Suite 100 in St. Paul, Minnesota. The zip code is 55114. The adult coffee clubs will begin at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on February 11th, March 11th, April 25th, May 13th, June 10th. Understanding Autism virtual classes are offered by the Autism Society of Minnesota. The next classes will be on February 10th, 12 to 1 p.m., March 10th, 6 to 7 p.m., April 14th, 10 to 11 a.m., May 12th, 12 to 1 p.m., and June 9th, 6 to 7 p.m. Classes are free of charge, but you must register to attend. On March 7th, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., Leah Kuipers will present the workshop, What's New with Zones of Regulation, Updated Approaches and Curriculum. Beginning on Saturday, March 15th, and continuing March 22nd and the 29th, from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., Jillian Nelson will present the workshop, Policy Power, Advocacy for an Inclusive Future. Register today to attend the 30th Minnesota Autism Conference, April 16th through the 18th, at the DoubleTree by Hilton Minneapolis Airport Hotel on 2020 American Boulevard in East Bloomington, Minnesota, 55425. There will be keynote speakers, in-person and virtual breakout sessions, social opportunities for community building, and resource table. The hyperlink to this event is on the transcript. Go to ausm.org to get more information about these and other social and recreational programs, educational events, counseling services, and support groups at the Autism Society of Minnesota. Min Neurodivergent is a social club rooted in a vision of bringing neurodivergent Minnesotans together to build meaningful connections. Its core principle is to foster an environment where all are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of ability or preferences. Go to their new website, mindivergent.org, for more information, become a member, volunteer, and attend their events. The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network invites autistic college students to join them for the 2025 Virtual Autism Campus Inclusion Academy that will be held on July 14th to the 20th. Click on the ASON Autism Campus Inclusion Academy link on todaysautisticmoment.com/bulletin board to get more information and apply by midnight on Sunday, March 9th. Today's Autistic Moment is here because of the generosity of supporters and sponsors. Please go to todaysautisticmoment.com and select Support Today's Autistic Moment to donate. If you have questions about today's Autistic Moment, please send an email to todaysautisticmoment@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Today's Autistic Moment, a podcast for autistic adults by an autistic adult. May you have an autistically amazing day. All of the guests meet with me on Zoom to record the interviews. The interview transcripts are provided by Otter. The podcast is prepared and edited on WavePad Masters Edition by NCH Software. The podcast is published by Spotify for Podcasters. The music that you hear is licensed to Today's Autistic Moment by PremiumBeat.com.